Marriage is meant to be a bond of trust, a promise to nurture and protect. But sometimes behind polished smiles and professional titles, monsters hide in plain sight. And in 1994, Japan would discover one of its darkest betrayals, not by a stranger lurking in the night, but by a husband, a father, and a doctor. This is the case of Dr. Iwao Nomoto. It was the morning of November 3, 1994, when workers along the bustling port of Yokohama noticed something bobbing in the water. At first, it looked like nothing unusual, a white plastic bag, swollen by the tide, weighed down by a stone. Curious, a fisherman hauled it toward shore. But when the Japanese Coast Guard pried the bag open, they staggered back. Inside was the dismembered body of a woman, arms folded unnaturally, pale skin marred by rope marks, lifeless eyes staring at nothing. The sea had become a grave, and its secret was beginning to rise. Within days, 2 more bags were found floating near the same harbor. This time, the contents shattered even the hardened composure of investigators. Tiny bodies. One was a girl of 2 years, Ayaka. The other, a baby boy, only 9 months old, Kaido. Both wrapped crudely, stuffed away as if they were garbage. A mother and her children discarded like refuse. Japan, a nation that prides itself on safety and order, suddenly faced a crime so grotesque that it seemed unimaginable. The family's name was Nomoto. The mother was 31-year-old Aiko, once a bright-eyed nurse from Tsukuba, a city renowned for its research institutes and quiet suburban life. She had left her own career behind to raise her children, sometimes even taking exhausting night shifts as a hostess just to make ends meet. And the man who had reported her missing, who stood before police with his head hung in supposed grief, was her husband, Dr. Iwao Nomoto, a surgeon at Yokohama City Hospital. At first, Dr. Nomoto played the part of the devastated widower. In interviews, he whispered in a broken voice, avoided eye contact, and trembled as he described his family's sudden disappearance. To the public, he seemed almost pitiable, but detectives at the Yokohama precinct noticed something odd. On his wrists were fresh wounds, raw, red, circular marks. When questioned, he muttered that they were dog bites. Yet the explanation rang hollow, and behind his practiced mask of sorrow, something colder seemed to flicker. As the investigation deepened, the truth about Aiko's marriage began to surface. Police seized her diary, and within its pages lay the testimony of a woman trapped in a collapsing world. She wrote of debts piling up, of her husband lavishing money on mistresses, buying them apartments, gifting them luxury items, while she herself worked until exhaustion to clothe and feed their children. She wrote of betrayal, of humiliation, of nights spent crying alone. Friends confirmed it. Aiko confided often about Nomoto's infidelities, about his drinking, his gambling, his reckless spending that had sunk them into financial ruin. She wanted a divorce. She wanted custody of her children, and she wanted freedom from a man who had turned her life into a nightmare. But for Nomoto, divorce was not just the loss of a wife. It was the end of his carefully curated image. In Japan's rigid professional culture, a surgeon is not just a doctor. He is a figure of respect, someone expected to embody discipline and honor. A scandal involving debts, mistresses, and a public divorce would have destroyed his reputation at the hospital, undermined his career, and exposed him as a fraud. He could not allow that. According to his later confession, it was in the pre-dawn hours of October 29, 1994, that everything unraveled. Around 5 a.m., Aiko and Iwao argued once again. The subject was familiar: his affairs, his debts, his endless lies. But this time, Aiko threatened to expose him to his colleagues, to strip away the image he clung to. In his version, which many later called self-serving, she placed a rope around her own neck in despair, and he pulled it in panic. But prosecutors, examining the marks on her body and the sequence of events, believed otherwise. They believed it was murder, cold and intentional. What happened next leaves little doubt of his cruelty. With Aiko lifeless at his feet, Nomoto turned to his children. 2-year-old Ayaka, still in her pajamas, and baby Kaido, only 9 months old. He later claimed it was a mercy killing, that he did not want them to suffer knowing their father was a murderer. But the brutality of his act betrayed that claim. He smothered them both, pressing their tiny faces until they stopped breathing. 2 innocent lives snuffed out by the man who should have been their protector. The hours that followed revealed the depth of his depravity. Calmly, clinically, as though preparing for surgery, He placed the bodies into plastic bags. He tied them with rope using a traditional rice bale knot, an unusual technique for someone of his age, one that suggested preparation rather than panic. He stuffed the bags into his car, and then instead of breaking down or rushing to confess, he drove, not to the police, not to the hospital, but to Yokohama harbor, where he dumped the bags into the water, weighed down with stones. And yet, even with his wife and children's bodies in his trunk, he did not retreat into guilt. Instead, in one of the most chilling details of the case, he stopped for pleasure. He visited a strip club. He then went to a brothel. He indulged himself, as though nothing had happened, as though the corpses in his car were meaningless. When he finally returned home, he filed a missing persons report, playing the role of the desperate husband once again. He even booked a trip with one of his mistresses for the following week, convinced his crime had been perfectly hidden. But lies unravel. CCTV footage placed his car near the harbor. Forensics revealed inconsistencies in his timeline. Iwao diary gave prosecutors a window into years of suffering, infidelity, and deceit. And the discovery of that rice bale knot, a detail not easily improvised, suggested deliberate planning. For investigators, the picture was clear. This was not a man who panicked. This was a man who calculated, who murdered to protect his reputation, and who discarded his family like trash. By the time his trial opened, Japan was transfixed. Newspapers splashed his photograph, clean-cut, bespectacled, the perfect image of a surgeon. Television shows debated endlessly. How could a doctor sworn to save lives kill his own family with such indifference? For the public, there was only one fitting punishment: death. Prosecutors demanded it. They argued that his actions were deliberate, premeditated, and carried out with chilling precision. They pointed to the sequence: strangling Iwao, smothering the children, disposing of the bodies, indulging himself at nightclubs. This was not impulse, it was method. But the defense clung to his confession, portraying him as a man pushed to the edge, overwhelmed by debts, humiliated by threats of exposure, and driven into a sudden fit of violence. They argued he was remorseful, that he had been a respected doctor who snapped under pressure. And in Japan, where the death penalty is reserved for the most heinous of crimes, this portrayal made the difference. In 1997, the court sentenced him not to death, but to life imprisonment. Over 3,000 petitioners signed for leniency. Colleagues and acquaintances testified to his supposed kindness, and the Tokyo High Court upheld the ruling. The nation was stunned. Many saw it as a failure of justice, a betrayal of Iwao and her children. To this day, the case raises haunting questions. Was it truly a crime of passion, or had Nomoto carefully planned every step, knowing that exposure would destroy him? How could a man stop at strip clubs and brothels with the corpses of his family in his car and still claim he acted without premeditation? Did he escape the punishment he deserved? Or did the court, swayed by his status and the pleas of his supporters, allow him to live while his victims lay silenced forever? The story of Dr. Iwao Nomoto is not just about murder. It is about betrayal at its most intimate. Iwao, a woman who sacrificed everything, who worked herself to exhaustion for her family. Ayaka and Kaito, children who never had the chance to grow up, their futures erased in moments, and all destroyed by the one person meant to protect them. Even decades later, Japan remembers. The case is taught in law classes, debated in ethics discussions, whispered about by those who recall the headlines. Because some monsters do not hide in shadows. They wear white coats. They smile in family photos. They tuck their children into bed, only to betray them. They sit at dinner tables, practicing the performance of a loving parent, while inside they nurture something darker. And perhaps the most chilling truth is this: if not for a fisherman spotting that plastic bag in the harbor, perhaps the crime would never have been uncovered. Perhaps Dr. Nomoto would have continued his double life, his reputation intact, his mistresses entertained, his colleagues none the wiser. The thought lingers, unsettling and unresolved. So now I ask you, do you believe justice was truly served? Was life imprisonment enough for a man who strangled his wife, smothered his children, and discarded them like refuse? Or should Dr. Nomoto have faced the ultimate punishment? And what does his case say about the fragility of trust, that the very people sworn to protect us can sometimes be the most dangerous of all? Share your thoughts below. I'll be reading them all. And if you want more true crime stories like this one, Don't forget to subscribe to Crimnest. Every week we uncover the darkest cases from across Asia, where betrayal, greed, and obsession turn ordinary homes into nightmares. Until next time, stay safe.